Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hormone Genius podcast. I am here with my co-host Teresa Kenny, and we are also here today with Jess Reynolds. We're really excited to interview Jess Reynolds today because we're going to be talking about a very important topic, HG, so Hyperemesis gravidarum. And so, again, this is a super important topic, especially if you yourself have suffered from HG. That's what we're going to reference this as throughout the podcast because it's a bit easier. But Jess is going to be, again, talking about this topic, and her background is in holistic root cause care. She has a master's degree in anatomy, and she's board certified in holistic health. So her work bridges deep physiological understanding with nature-based wisdom. So we love that, especially in regards to preparing for pregnancy, if that's your hope and goal. And then thinking about, if you've had HG in the past, you've heard of friends who have in your life, and it just really interrupted their flow of their well-being, then this is an important topic, of course, to pay attention to. So, Jess, welcome to our show today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm super excited to chat about this and just share, a little bit about the difference between morning sickness and hyperemesis, gravidarum, and yeah, walk you through what I've learned in the many years of studying this.
Awesome. Well, very good. Jess, where does this come from? Did you have your own experience with severe nausea in pregnancy? Is this what kind of turned you on to this topic?
Yeah, one of those examples of learning the hard way. I had HG, it probably onset about week 5. I was throwing up between 5 and 30 times a day, often holding my mouth closed, just trying to do breath work, unable to keep in water. I'd lost about 20 pounds in my first trimester, been hospitalized many times. Of course, the solution was just here's a medication, we'll try this medication and IV fluids, and I really didn't get any sustainable relief. However, just with my background and my tenacity to know the why behind everything, I was able to create a plan for myself and end up reversing my HG. I only threw up once 3 days after implementing my plan, and then I was never sick again. And so that was really my experience in a nutshell.
So that's pretty profound. Like no, normally, it feels like it takes a lot longer to figure something out than 3 days and to implement something like that. And I am a nurse practitioner, Jess, so I have seen patients with severe nausea and vomiting in pregnancy. Haven't worked with HG specifically because those are sometimes so severe they actually get referred out to a specialist. But let's just talk about what is the cause. Because, like you said, there is this approach to taking medication, and many times multiple medications that women are on, kind of like around the clock to kind of keep them from vomiting. But what is the cause of HG? And maybe you can define what the cause is from a medical standpoint, but maybe what also you learned is really the underlying root cause from a holistic perspective.
Yeah, I would say from a medical standpoint, the cause is unknown for the most part. I mean, most doctors, if you were to ask them that, that would be the answer. Certainly, there's a lot more research going into a genetic component around the GDF15 gene and protein. However, I don't feel like that is the missing link. And I've really talked about that throughout my work because if it was genetics and it was genetic expression, I wouldn't be able to change my genetic expression in 3 days. I wouldn't be able to turn it around. I wouldn't be able to do that for other women who I've worked with. And so, what we're really looking at is much like cancer and autoimmune disease, it's multifactorial. And this is why it slips through the cracks when it comes to research, because obviously we're trying to nail down a single variable and figure that out. So, what I'm really seeing in the background is a culmination of nutrient deficiencies, toxicities, or poor detox pathways of the body and imbalances, whether that's in an organ system or in the nervous system in general. And those three things are combining. Of course, each of those have more underlying issues. I'd look in at liver health, gallbladder health, kidney function, digestive strength and function, and those things. But, in a high level overview, that's really what's going into it. And every woman's profile and picture of that is a little bit different. Your digestive capacity is different than mine. Your life experiences and therefore how you emotionally process things is different. The function of your liver because of what toxins are in your environment is different. So it's really that piece coming together.
Okay, Jess, so for you, you said you were able to reverse your case in 3 days, and that early on, in your pregnancies, you would vomit between, did you say 13 and how many times?
Between
50?
5 and 30 times a
Oh,
day.
5 and 30 times a day. That is great. Okay, so for you, what did you find was the cause? You said multifactorial, which we know is true, but for your case, please share with us kind of your journey.
Yeah, so one of the things that I noticed is when I was in hospital, they would give me medication and it would help. It would inhibit the symptoms, but it wasn't without any risk. And I know that just by research. But my brain was kind of sparked as to, okay, what are these medications actually doing? So I learned that Zofran, which was helpful, was a serotonin. It would bind to serotonin receptors, and that would impact the level of the gut and the brain. So I knew there was something, a component around gut health. And then I knew that diclectin was a B6 and an antihistamine. So I started supplementing with B6 and I started looking at why would my histamine be high. So I analyzed my diet, I analyzed what breaks down histamine in the body. So again, that's gut and kidney really. And I looked at that. I looked into Dr. Ben Lynch has a book called Dirty Genes, and it was already on my shelf. I'd read it a couple times. I reread it and really pieced together the puzzle. So for me, it was poor kidney function, and that was really on the back end of poor mineral status. I was drinking water from a Berkey. I thought I was doing a great job. I didn't understand that, filtering and remineralizing your water were two different things. I was eating high histamine foods. So I was trying to improve my gut health with kimchi and kombucha and sauerkraut and all of the things that ended up, causing me a little bit more harm. It was just something that when I look back in my history, a lot of these things piece together in terms of like allergies and sinus stuff. So yeah, for me, it was a combination of changing my diet, cutting out a number of foods that I had been thinking were helpful. It was changing my water source. It was supporting my kidneys, looking into the emotional root cause. In traditional Chinese medicine, the kidneys are around fear. So where was I holding on to fear? Was that downregulating the function of my organs? And then supporting my gut health as well. And that was really like, okay, I'm gonna do A, B, C, and D, and then let's do it all at once. Let's do it with a bang. And when I did that, it shifted so fast. I wasn't expecting how good of a result I got.
So if we're just talking about like this nausea and vomiting in pregnancy, which is more, this is not HG. HG is a much more severe form of nausea and vomiting and actually affects the health of course, the patient, but also the health potentially of their baby as well. But I think, so what all the stuff that you just said, Jess, frankly, if I'm just a regular old gal sitting out there and I've been really nauseous when I'm pregnant, I find whatever and all you said fairly complicated and overwhelming. So let's just speak to our patients who are many who are pregnant and or have been pregnant and they were sick, maybe in the first trimester, sick enough that they had miserable days, sick enough that maybe they threw up every once in a while, but not like 13 times an hour, what are the very basic things that we need to know about, controlling nausea and pregnancy that kind of just simplifies it a little bit, just so that, everybody could probably do this if they're pregnant right now?
Yeah, so much like thirst is a signal that we need hydration and the minerals that come with hydration, nausea is the sign that we need nourishment. And so when we are feeling nauseous, and particularly when medications aren't changing nausea, maybe they're stopping our vomiting, it's because our body has deficiencies that it's asking for and it's speaking out for. So that is going to be individual to each woman of what nutrients, but in general, we typically need whole food B vitamins. I say whole food because synthetic can be harder for our body to convert and utilize depending on our genetic expression and things. So we really do need more of that. We typically need more protein because protein breaks down into amino acids and that fuels the liver and the liver's function. So we need more of that. Addressing our water quality, if we are on tap water, it's important to be mindful that tap water is essentially purified sewage. And so if your body is rejecting that, maybe it's seeing it as a toxin, which it could very well be. It could be overwhelming to the system, or it could be coming with no nutrient value. Again, if we look back of how would we have been drinking water, we would have been drinking water from a spring or coconut water or fruit or things like that. We wouldn't just be always pouring from this tap of this recycled water. And so really making sure that everything that we're bringing into our body has some mineral or nutrient capacity in it, that's going to shift nausea quite a lot, because that's really the indicator. That's a warning sign. Like, our body needs nourishment and nausea is the signal, and we just never were taught that.
So how do you, when working with women, how do you go about finding if there is a mineral imbalance? Do you just look at blood work? Are there other ways to assess that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've done is I've created this system essentially that goes through every nutrient, and there would be a scan of like 15 signs of a deficiency. I believe that the body speaks in deficiencies, or speaks in symptoms, sorry, and we just haven't been taught that. So like when our hair is going gray, like, are we missing copper or zinc? When our nails have marks on them, when our tongue has a line down the middle, is that a B vitamin deficiency? There are lots of ways, and it's rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, that the body shows these signs outwardly. And again, we've just been really disconnected from that piece. So it would be kind of going through that work as an individual. Like I said, Jamie, yours are going to be different than mine, or different than Teresa's. So one size fits all doesn't really fit on that. Assessing those deficiencies. And the reason why I start with that, of course, someone may come with a hair mineral analysis test as well. Um, but why I start with that is because we're going to get so much more of a comprehensive picture. Blood work, by comparison, our blood chemistry has to stay fairly stable, or else we can go into either metabolic or respiratory distress, or we'd have larger imbalances. And in that effort to keep stability in the blood, our body has resources to pull nutrients back out from tissues. So if the blood needs more magnesium or calcium, it can pull that calcium from our teeth and our bones, and we can experience that postpartum as poor oral health, and we can think that's because of the vomiting, but it may also be a demineralization, because our body's attempting to make our blood have the adequate levels of nutrients and minerals and everything it needs. So when someone's coming and asking, like, what blood work do I do? It's like that blood chemistry changes in a minute, let alone now it's weeks or months old, and it doesn't tell me anything about your tissue levels. So you may have supplied the blood, or you may be giving to the baby, but now your body in its tissues doesn't have that insurance policy, doesn't have those backup reserves anymore.
So since we're talking about nutrients and minerals, I'm going to stop for a moment and give a shout out to our podcast partners. We Heart Nutrition is one of our podcast partners who fills the gap when it comes to nutrients and minerals and vitamins. So of course, we want people to know where their deficiencies are, but a lot of times we generally just need a good multivitamin, a good supplement that's going to hit all of our needs. And We Heart Nutrition, they have plenty of options for multivitamins with minerals. They have probiotics. They have immune support supplements. We really want you to check them out. WeHeartNutrition.com, and you can get 20% off of the code GENIUS. Also, in regards to gut health, we have Wonder Cow. And Wonder Cow, Jamie and I have been on a quest to support our immune systems this winter with colostrum. Colostrum is that milk that comes as the first milk from a mammal, and it is filled with antibodies and good things for the body, including minerals and vitamins as well. Wonder Cow colostrum products are amazing. They've got gummies now, and they're coming out with new products. You can go to wondercow.com. Use also the code Hormone Genius for 30% off a subscription or 15% off your first order. And lastly, we have Grazing Beauty tallow. We're going to stay in the cow area. So tallow is great for the skin, and also great for your lips. And they have amazing magnesium-based tallow for muscle soreness. GrazingBeauty.com tallow. You can get 10% off with the code. Also, it's Hormone Genius as well, right, Jamie? So we've got 3 awesome sponsors for this podcast today. Please check them all out and give them a review, because we believe, Jamie and I, that they are awesome products as well. Okay, so Jess, I want to go back to HG, and I want you to help our listeners understand, how do they know if their vomiting and nausea with pregnancy is just the run of the mill? When does it really push over into that severe area where they would be classified as HG hyperemesis?
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction. And, if you're looking at the HER Foundation, or you're looking for a more objective way to know if you're falling into the category of HG, it would be that you're vomiting more than 3 times a day, you're dehydrated or malnourished as a result of not being able to eat or hold in food. Typically, there's a weight loss of 5% or more, and you would describe the nausea as debilitating. That differs from the experience of routine morning sickness, which would really be, on occasion you're getting sick, your nausea is happening every day, but it's not stopping you from being able to participate in your life. So I think that's really the piece. And you don't have to, in my opinion, fall all the way into a severe form of HG to want to get support. I think if your symptoms are impacting your ability to show up in your life, they're impacting your ability to nourish your body and your baby through this season, there's implications of that, and it's worth considering supporting your body through that, even if you're not to the extent of needing consistent medication or symptom management.
Okay, so this is super helpful, but I want to spend a little bit more time on just the morning sickness element.
Yeah.
So, the majority of women have morning sickness. I mean, at some point in their pregnancy. And again, you just gave a really nice overview of how we know it's HG versus morning sickness. But is it true with morning sickness, and might it be true with HG, that if you make sure that you prioritize your protein intake? It's always what I was told. When pregnant, like, you know what, Jamie, you need at least 80 grams of protein a day. This was before the protein craze, like 15 years ago or 13 years ago. You need to make sure, it'll help with morning sickness. And I can say I had some morning sickness, but not a lot. I mean, I just really prioritize my protein, and that was the one basic simple thing, and staying hydrated and not eating a bunch of garbage. You know what I mean? So would you say that is do you feel like that is true and accurate? Has that changed? Are there nuances, which I'm sure there are, but let's kind of focus on protein and morning sickness and then lean into even its effect with HG.
Yeah, I think absolutely. One of the things that people don't understand is that each organ system has requirements for specific nutrients to carry out the function. And so the liver is primarily driven, especially in phase 2 of detoxification, by amino acids. Amino acids are the breakdown of protein. So what that means in layman's terms is your body requires the smallest building blocks of protein for your liver to be able to detoxify and for your liver to carry out its functions with bile, which are involved in your nutrient absorption. And if you do not have that, your body isn't going to be doing that second phase of detox, which means the waste products that your body basically tags and identifies as, hey, this is garbage, let's take out the trash. The second step is actually taking out that trash, which is phase 2. And the body can't do that when it doesn't have protein. So when you're asking and encouraging a high protein diet, you're really supplying the body's detox capacity as well as the body's bile strength, which is key in being able to digest nutrients out of fat. So your vitamins A, D, K, and E. So that is one of the reasons why we're in a protein deficient state. You're not going to be able to detox as well. So your toxic burden is going up. You're not going to be able to absorb fat soluble nutrients as well. So your nourishment is going down. And it's that scale that starts to tip that we really see involved in both morning sickness and in HG, just obviously to different severities depending on which one we're talking about.
So what is it about the first trimester that makes you want to do the exact opposite of that? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in general, even with my patients, I'm like, do your best. It is important to prioritize protein, but sometimes all you can get down is a cracker or some cereal. You know what I mean? And because you said intuitively the body knows it needs nutrition, and you're saying protein is the most nutrient dense foods we can eat and gets us those fat soluble vitamins and those amino acids. But yet it's almost as if the body is like, I don't want those. I don't want eggs. I don't want meat. It all sounds terrible. So is that just, I mean, is that like our body's supposed to be getting it? We just want to crave the other way? Or is there any sort of a reason for it?
So I think there's two parts to this. There's one that is a hypersensitivity to anything that may not be top quality, right? So if an egg has gone a little foul or something, we're going to have aversions slightly to things that may or may not bring in more bacteria that our body couldn't cope with. But the real driver that I see behind aversions is that's a measure of your digestive function. So if your body is unable, so you don't have enough stomach acid to break down protein into amino acids, if you can't carry out that function, your body will not want you to bring that in because it's going to end up expending more energy or causing more problems than it is to benefit. Now, why carbohydrates or an easy cracker or something like that is much more desirable is because you chewing that and your saliva is what's digesting that carbohydrate. So in our mouth, we can actually convert that to blood sugar. The net gain of energy is so much quicker with so much less work. We do not have to have adequate levels of stomach acid, adequate motility, good liver gallbladder function, strong bile, gut health motility. So the demand to digest each of those foods is significantly different, and our body will just take in what energy is going to be sort of a quick win when we're in that state of really struggling to balance that.
Our body is so intuitive. I love that you said that because even if I think about my children and I think about like one kid in particular, he struggles, he has gut health issues, and we're always working on it. And guess what? He's always craving that quick energy, the carbs, the rice, the cracker. It's just always, and it makes sense because he does have gut issues, and the body knows it can digest this fairly quickly, fairly easily for quick energy, and here we go. So for those who might have that same tendency, because there is an intelligence within our body, and you use the example of stomach acid, we don't have enough stomach acid to break down those proteins. How would one increase their stomach acid naturally?
Yeah, so with stomach acid, when you actually look in the research, most times what we believe is actually almost inverted. And so we often believe that we have too much stomach acid. We need to take a PPI or an antacid or something to settle it. And what we're actually seeing is we don't have enough stomach acid. And so in order to get that food fully submerged in the stomach and be able to carry out the chemical digestion that is needed with the bile acids and everything, the body tries to almost bubble it. Like I think of like the dish soap on top of the water, like you're expanding the volume. So now the dish is fully like submerged. You don't see it, but it's not quite the same. And that pressure is what creates some of that acid reflux and the experience that we have. And we think we need to settle it down and take that. And over time, that's actually going to deteriorate our stomach acid levels. In order to improve them, we actually need to give our body the stimulus of protein. So we need to be tapering in, and we can start with more easy to digest proteins, things like broths or soups that have meat stock in them. We need to manage our stress because stress is a depletion factor when it comes to it. Certain blood types can also be. I think one of the easiest, quickest things that anyone listening could do right now is we need to interact with our food before we eat. So we actually have all these senses. Our hands have so many senses, and now we're eating with utensils. Our nose, smelling the food, feeling the food, preparing for the food. That is all information that our body is taking in about the type of food we are about to eat, the type of digestive enzymes, bile, pancreatic enzymes, hydrochloric acid, all of those things are going to ramp up. And we're in sort of this culture where it's like fast food or quick eating, meal prepping. It's like the body had no concept of what was coming in, and then it was just food and it wasn't prepared to digest. So we can really prepare by seeing, smelling, and interacting with our food.
I don't think anyone's ever brought that up on our podcast before, Jamie. I think that's a really good point, and also just the nature of people need to slow down, interacting with our food. When you first said it, I was like, well, that's weird. Who's going to interact with their food? Do we need to talk to it first or something? But that completely makes sense, though. One, it slows you down. Two, it prepares you for what you're going to eat. But I do think, like you said, it's kind of like the body then knows kind of what's going to be coming in a sense, preparing for it. So I thought that was really cool. I do want to know, and it sounds like most of what kind of do, Jess, is help people learn to, kind of heal from food, restore from food, restore from things that are the most holistic kind of possible. But I would like to ask, is there any supplements that are helpful for specifically nausea in pregnancy, that you do recommend besides just kind of changing the diet and that sort of things? Is there kind of simple supplements like B6 we know is out there? Do you recommend that? Is there certain forms of even B6? Because we know there is pyroxidine plus the broken down version is P5P. So what guidance do you give in regards to supplements, or is there cases where you do still think medication is helpful?
Yeah, I think I'll address the medication quickly. If this medication is going to be a bridge and it's going to allow you time to sort of get in nourishment on the back end, then that is something that I'm never against in that regard. I just champion for informed consent around those medications, of course. But truthfully, when it comes to supplements, I tend to want to lean towards bovine glandular tissues or sheep tissues, whole foods, plants, and things like that. So if I'm looking for a nutrient, there's a few that I'll take in sort of a synthetic lab made form. But just as we interact with our food and our body kind of knows what's coming in, I think it does that differently when it's something coming from nature versus something coming from a lab as well. So if you were looking for like an overall support, something that I would say is pretty generic for most people, I really do like spirulina. I think spirulina, pound per pound, it has every amino acid. It has more protein than grass-fed beef in itself. Of course, you're not going to be eating enough to get the volume in the same regard, but a high quality spirulina, I love the brand Energy Bits just for the fact that their quality and their purity is so high. When you look on there, they have breakdowns of every amino acid, um, mineral contents, like, we're not thinking about how much molybdenum or manganese or any of these micronutrients that we need because it's just never been ingrained in our system. So I would say that's something that's going to give a really wide profile of both amino acids and micronutrients that people are probably maybe missing. Again, I always do want to start with the most natural form. So when I'm taking in bees, I would probably look to do a combination of beef organs and either spirulina or chlorella and seeing how much we can blanket that. If that's not possible, then moving to a methylated bee. But again, I like to try to understand like someone's MTHFR status or likelihood of MTHFR because that's going to mean that they convert and methylate different for that. And when someone's struggling with methylation, they may not uptake the synthetic form as well. So when and where possible, it's whole foods first. If you can't get in whole foods, it's a whole food-based supplement. And if you can't get in that, then what's the best form of a synthetic lab-made supplement that we can put in there?
Hmm. Super good. This is great. This is like 3 episodes jammed into one. I feel like this is so good. It's like very potent in a good way. Like this is a compliment. I'm learning so much from you. Okay, so just talk about a client you've worked with. What was she experiencing prior to working with you, and then how did your help with her case restore her?
Yeah, so I mean, I just got off a call with one of my clients yesterday. She has had 5 previous pregnancies. She's on her sixth. She found me and then within days found out she was pregnant, not even planning or trying to be. So I have that come up very often. And, she was crying on the call yesterday, just saying that in being able to address these root causes and tweak everything on the fly, there would be times where all of a sudden, like, weirdly, I had another day of vomiting and I haven't vomited in 2 weeks. Why is that? And we would just sort of dissect it and go through it. And, what really stood out to me is she said, my marriage is so much better this pregnancy because my husband doesn't have to do everything. And she got emotional and she cried because her daughter, she said her HG profile and in all her past pregnancies was that she was always get sick around 3 in the afternoon and she'd just be out for the rest of the night. So she had like the opposite of morning sickness. She had night sickness or afternoon sickness. But her kids are homeschooled. The dinner time was really the time that they got to talk and share their stories and unpack their day. And her mom or her daughter came in, she said the day before, and just said, Mommy, I'm so happy that you get to have dinner and talk with us. And just how much that changed her life because she was missing out on that experience for so long. And yeah, I think there's quite a number of women that have come into my world in and around maybe 20 weeks. And nothing's helped them. And so through this individualization, figuring out what's really the problem for them, we're unable to pack it. And then it just step by step, it gets better and better and better.
This is life-changing, really, because being sick when you're pregnant and then also having to care for children or be a wife, is so difficult. I mean, motherhood and the sacrifice that women's bodies go through is just you just can't say enough about what women really take on in creating human beings,
Mhm.
and we just can't state that enough, really. It's such an incredible power we have, but also a sacrifice because our body is literally growing a second human person. And then we nourish and feed that child when it comes into the world, and we care for our children until they go off and on their way. So just want to say, like, thank you, moms out there. Thank you for taking that on. It's not easy. And when you're sick, it's 10 times harder. So having answers to something like HG or just really bad nausea in pregnancy is a huge thing. So with that, I want you to be able to share just like how do people work with you, Jess? And then if there's just any other kind of like tidbits or like really just words of wisdom from what you've learned going through all this yourself, and then we'll let Jamie kind of ask the last question after that.
Yeah, I would say like one thing that's really shifted in my work is obviously I came into supporting the women who are actively pregnant and sick. And as I've seen this go on, I'm becoming so much more passionate about doing this work preconception, because how do we expect to build a baby, their teeth, their bones, their hair, when we don't have those resources or those minerals, right? And then we see that baby come out and it has tongue ties and digestive issues and colic, and its nervous system's a little dysregulated because there was a severe mineral deficiency during pregnancy, and we want to almost blame the child. It doesn't sit still, it doesn't do this, it's a bad sleeper, it's whatever. And it's like, we change the world by changing the foundation of that child. And so this is why I'm so passionate about doing this work in preconception and really addressing as many of these factors as possible beforehand, so that becomes the foundation of health that the child has to come into this world with. And yeah, in terms of working with me, I mean, everything that I pretty much do is centered around Instagram. My Instagram is born_from_her. I work with both pregnant women and preconception women. Of course, you can probably sense my passion for trying to get this as early as possible. And everything that I share, I try to post out a lot of content. I try to do a lot of these podcasts and just really share this message, because I want women to believe, just as you mentioned, that women are already going through so much, and to then hold a lot of guilt or shame or I wish I would have known because they didn't have access to this information is really, it touches my heart quite a lot. So yeah, that's really, I guess, the sentiment, that I just want women to know that there's other ways that we can support their body, and that in doing so, it just takes a weight off of them that shouldn't even be there in the first place.
It's so beautiful. And so many women and couples, they may desire desperately for more children. They've always thought about having many children, but they had one, and the gal struggled with HG, and she just cannot mentally get her head wrapped around kid number two, like fearful. I'm going to share a quick story, and then I'm going to ask you the last question. A couple weeks ago, I was asked to speak just in a nearby town at a mom's group, at like a small little church moms group thing. And I was talking about the cycle, and I was, giving them information about their period and what should be normal within the cycle, this and that. And this gal came up to me after, and I could tell just by looking at her, her eyes were very dilated, and she was in fight or flight. I could just tell. And so I sat down and talked to her, and I said, tell me what's going on. She was like, I wasn't going to come today, but something told me to come, and I think I really need help. And I could just tell, she's like, I'm on birth control. I can't be off birth control, but I feel really bad, like very bad. I don't feel good. I can't be the mother I want to be. And I said, what would be the worst thing if you got a birth control? Well, I'd get pregnant. Okay, so tell me about that. What are you so afraid of getting pregnant? And again, we've been talking for a while. So she's like, I cannot get pregnant. I was so sick. I said, if you weren't sick, would you be as scared of getting pregnant? No. So it changed her whole life. Just like you said, it changed the way she parented. It even changed her physiology. I could tell. You know what I mean? I'm like, holy moly, even if maybe it wasn't in particular caused by birth control or whatever, but the fact that she was on it and that there's so much fear just wrapped into it, our whole conversation. And so I think about that a lot. I think, is this forming our family's decision? And is there a way? Is there hope? And the answer is yes, there is. So, Jess, I'm so glad you're here, and that you shared your story. And I really pray that people who need to reach out will to you, Jess. Okay, I'm going to ask you the question I ask every woman we interview. What do you wish every woman knew about her hormone genius?
Hmm. Everything that I teach, everything that I share is centered around how nature impacts our body and our biology, and how the more that we can align with that, the more easeful our experience in our body is going to be. So we don't recognize that we have so many drivers, are the sunlight, the time spent outside, the grounding, like there is so much that our body is just naturally meant to sync with nature. And the more that we can get back to that, the less we're going to have to chase these symptoms, the less we're going to have to struggle. So, yeah, I would just share that little piece.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us, Jess. We'll make sure to put all of the links to Jess's Instagram so you can really get in touch with her personally. If you are struggling, this obviously is an answer especially like Jamie said, for those of you who are fearing future pregnancies because you don't want to be sick again, this is such good news. Hope for the future pregnancies, the future children you will bear. So please reach out to Jess if you are having that concern. And thank you for being here again, Jess. We will talk to you again. We're gonna have to bring you on, and maybe we're gonna have to bring you on to talk about like methylation in detail, because you obviously have like a super sciencey brain. You can just tell, like you understand what really is going on in the body. So maybe we'll have you back for that if you're open to it.
Amazing. I'd love part two.
All right.
Thanks
Thanks
so much.
again. We'll see you soon.